In 1958, a pregnant mother was informed by doctors that her unborn child would be impaired. She was advised to terminate the pregnancy. She declined. That infant went up to become the most well-known blind tenor in the world years later. But there was a cost to fame. After consuming wine at his Tuscan estate in 2005, Andrea Bocelli ended up in the hospital, thinking he had been poisoned. Officials referred to it as a fraud. However, the fear persisted. Then, in 2020, he said something worse during a lockdown. Threats of death were so severe that he left the nation. In 2023, a family Christmas dinner revealed music wounds that no one was aware of. They didn't show you this story. On September 22, 1958, Andrea Bocelli was born in the little town of Leicester. Money was, music, always tight in this peaceful rural area where life was still moving slowly after the war. His parents were employed on a 120-hectare family farm. It sold machinery, made wine, music, and required everyone to work hard. People could not depend on electricity on a daily basis. Working the land was how most families made their living, and the Bocellis, music, were no exception. Andrea was a part of that rhythm even as a little child. Life consisted of harvests, long days, and shared meals. His life was already being questioned before he was even born. When doctors found out he had congenital glaucoma, they informed his mother that her child would probably be blind. She was advised to terminate the pregnancy. Eddie declined. She had faith that went beyond fear. She would tell Andrea that it was the right decision years later, and he remembered her comments. His strength grew silently from that moment. Growing up, he was aware that despite the odds, he was selected to survive. His early years were characterized by lengthy hospital visits and odd treatments. In an attempt to save his vision, doctors employed techniques that seem unimaginable today. In an attempt to relieve pressure, leeches were applied to his eyes. Andrea maintained partial sight till he was 12 years old in spite of everything. His mother listened to classical records next to his bed during those hospital nights. He was soothed by music. The ache seemed far away. Sound gradually became his haven. His vision was already deteriorating to the point where even basic tasks could be dangerous by the time he, music, was 3 years old. It was dangerous to stroll through vineyards. His hearing improved, but running was more difficult. He started mimicking the noises of animals, birds, and tunes he heard in the house. He was deeply impacted by the Tuscan folk music that filled family gatherings. His imagination filled the void left by his sight, pulling him away from the outside world. He entertained himself with tales. He pictured locations. Imagination and music merged into one. 2 years later, his younger brother, Alberto, was born, and the two of them grew up surrounded by music, vines, and olive trees. Rough wooden tables built from farm waste were used for sharing meals. There was joking and laughter, and Andrea would frequently go up on a bench and sing as though it were a stage. He had a tendency toward performance even then. He started taking piano lessons in 1964 when he was 6 years old. He learned via touch because he was unable to rely on sight. Ears learned patterns, fingers learned keys. Andrea followed the music notes by feel as his mother continued to play recordings. He added saxophone and flute by the age of 8. Some of his peers made fun of him at school functions. He was unique because of his vision. Nevertheless, he continued. At the age of 14, he participated in a singing competition in Vario in 1972 and won with Osolio. He saw the power of music in that moment. He could escape everything else with it. Then came the turning point in the story. He was brutally hit in the face by a ball during a soccer match in 1970. A cerebral bleed resulted from the impact. The last of his eyesight vanished in an instant. The doctors made another attempt. Nothing was effective. Andrea lost her sight entirely when she was 12 years old. Suddenly, darkness came. He had to use only touch to relearn the piano. He picked up Braille. Every step, was painful, yet the music grew brighter than before. The only thing that felt whole was that school got more difficult. He was harassed by some classmates. They chuckled. They muttered. Andrea, music, secretly produced simple melodies while sitting at the family piano at night when the home was silent. He found refuge in those hours. Sound replaced pain. Anger became notes. He continued to become proficient with instruments and learned to read music in Braille. Music, what started out as survival, gradually evolved into meaning. He went to secondary school in the music 1970s, close to Pisa. He fell in love with literature, used Braille textbooks, and dictated writings. He occasionally missed music class to walk Tuscany's highlands and memorize poems while battling sadness. He started studying law at the University of Pisa in 1980. He tutored other blind pupils to make ends meet while traveling by rail. Not to prove music to others, but to himself, he put in more effort than most. He performed at nighttime piano bars in the early 1980s. The locations were harsh, the air was heavy with smoke, the crowds were boisterous, and the tips were meager. He used the money to educate in live while singing songs like My Way. His voice was formed by those nights. They taught him how to sense an audience and hold a room. At one of those piano bars, he met Andrea, music, Cenzati in 1987. She was 17. He was older. She listened as others spoke. She assisted him in reading lyrics and music that depicted the world he was unable to see. In June 1992, they tied the knot. She supported him through his worst moments and continued to be a part of his life through his two sons even after their marriage ended in 2002. After graduating from law school in 1986, Andrea practiced defense law for a while. It felt hollow even though it was respected and stable. Something clicked during a street musician instance. He came to see that music was his life, not simply a part of it. He chose uncertainty over the law. Everything changed in 1992. When Zucchero first heard him, he was 34 years old, blind, and performing at piano bars in Florence. For a Miser demo, Zucchero was looking for a voice. Music, Andrea performed it once. That was sufficient. The demo was swiftly and unprocessed. Because he was unable to read the sheet music, Andrea followed instructions verbally. He, music, was afraid. He found the strength to go on when Enrique read out words of encouragement intended for him. Everyone was astounded by the response, music, when the demo got to Luciano Pavarotti. He claimed that the vocalist was so talented that he was no longer required. Miser blew up all throughout Europe. It, song, was played nonstop on radio stations. Andrea transitioned from darkness to illumination. He debuted as Macduff and McBTH at Teatro Verde in Pisa on December 11, 1993. He almost broke from nerves. In the middle of the performance, he forgot his lines. He leaned into his voice rather than freezing, song. Everyone in the audience stood up. He realized then that he could go through anything with his voice. He and Zucchero went on a European tour later that year. He sang Miser in front of 50,000 people in Milan. He never went back to piano bars after that evening. He was an unknown when he entered the San Remo Music Festival in February 1994. He earned first place with record points while singing Il Are Calmo di Asera. He injured his knee after tripping over cables during rehearsals. Through the pain, he sang. Everyone was taken aback by the emotion. His debut album came out in November 1995. Within weeks, 300,000 copies were sold. Around the world, millions more followed. He gave a performance in the White House that same year. He and Sarah Brightman recorded Time to Say Goodbye in 1996. The song sold over 12 million copies globally and shattered records throughout Europe. Music was forever altered by a blind youngster from rural Tuscany. When Andrea Bocelli performed as Rodolfo in Puccini's Labo at the La Scala in Milan in 1998, she entered one of the most rigorous rooms in opera. His tenor sounded too near to pop for rigorous traditionalists' music, according to some commentators, and his manner did not match their expectations for a La Scala debut. Despite the disagreements in the reviews, the box office revealed a different picture. Every show sold out. An estimated €2 million was made from the production, which was a significant amount for an opera run at the time. Attracted by his records, snorts, and by the tale of a blind, music, tenor with a voice that seemed to reach directly to emotion, many who had never considered attending La Scala suddenly purchased tickets. The boundary that has always existed between popular music and classical music was subtly pushed by his presence in that building. Additionally, the success demonstrated that a crossover performer could easily pack a storied opera house. He maintained that momentum when he released the album Sono in 1999. His career took a drastic turn after this record. The prayer and the duet with Celine Dion that would follow him for years were part of it. He received 2 Grammy nominations for the song, one for Best Pop Collaboration and one for Best New Music Act. The industry was taken aback when a classical singer was nominated for Best New Artist for the first time in 38 years. Sono made a record for the genre by rising to the top of the Billboard Classical chart and remaining there for 22 weeks in a row. The prayer was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Original Song and won a Golden Globe. Bocelli entered homes all across the world and left the classical realm with that one album and that one duet. And it became evident that his role as an opera singer had expanded. He was a real crossover star now. The resistance increased along with his notoriety. He sang the lead in Werther at London's Covent Garden in 2000. The outcry was severe this time. The event was labeled as inauthentic opera by critics, music, who also charged him with diluting the art form to appeal to a wider audience. Some even asserted that his blindness hindered his acting and made it impossible for him to react to the visual language of the stage. Chell, however, responded to those criticisms by claiming that his blindness did not impair his acting. They became sharper as a result. He maintained that his ear and emotional sense had been educated by his blindness, and that he lived inside the music in a way that was independent of his visual perception. Fans and critics started debating what opera should be, and the controversy spread to newspapers and television. The Werther storm revealed a sharp division between those who felt opera should broaden its scope and those who wanted it to remain firmly entrenched in tradition. He quietly developed a different kind of project as that controversy reverberated in theaters and reviews. His album Sacred Eris, which was partially recorded at the Vatican's Santa Maria sopra Minerva Basilica, was released in 2002. His voice was surrounded by a natural echo from the church, which gave the recordings a depth that no studio could match. Sacred Eris went on to become the best-selling classical album by a single performer in history, with over 5 million copies sold worldwide. It won the Brit Award for Album of the Year and peaked at the top of 20 countries' classical charts. Listeners could sense the space in the sound itself as it featured renditions of songs like Maria recorded within the old chapel. Sacred music escaped church walls and found its way into the hands of regular listeners worldwide thanks to the Vatican's patronage and the album's enormous reach. Despite his success, he continued experimenting with different sounds. He released the CD Amore in 2004, which featured a flamboyant rendition of Besé Mucho. Many classical enthusiasts were taken aback by the combination of Spanish rhythm and Italian voice. It was described as strong and fresh by others. Some dismissed it as being too similar to commercial pop. But with time, the song grew to become one of his favorite compositions. He reached the biggest stages because of his eagerness to try new things. He sang Nessun Dorma and Because We Believe during the 2006 Turin Winter Olympics closing ceremony. With an estimated 3 billion watchers worldwide, it was one of the biggest audiences for a classical performance in history. He was more than just an Italian singer performing locally at that time. In the eyes of the world, he represented Italian music. There was a rigid private regimen behind these public moments. Bocelli frequently states that an opera singer needs to take care of their voice in the same manner that an athlete takes care of their body before a big game. He abstains from drinking prior to significant recordings and performances. He doesn't eat much. He takes as much time as he can to rest, music. Because he feels that all of the energy should be conserved for music expression, he has also publicly discussed not having music sex before significant dates. He clarified in interviews that if you want to sing at the best level, you cannot overdo everything. He was able to maintain a consistent and potent sound via years of repetition of this discipline, which allowed him build a career spanning decades. He had already sold over 80 million recordings by the time these rumors spread, and many fans were shocked to see how rigid his life was in contrast to the romantic, heartfelt themes of his songs. His influence continued to spread around the world. He was the main act at the Celebrate Africa concert held during the FIFA World Cup in July 2010 at the Music, Coca-Cola Dome in Johannesburg. He sang songs like Time to Say Goodbye, which moved some of the audience to tears and became a global talking point, in front of almost 100,000 spectators. Despite fierce competition in the holiday market, the concert's international transmission helped his CD My Christmas sell over 3 million copies in the US alone. He demonstrated once more that crossover in classical music could not only endure but also take center stage in venues typically dominated by rock and pop performers. Years later, in a completely different situation, that same combination of risk and bravery reappeared. He entered an empty Milan Music Cathedral on Easter Sunday for a solo performance titled Music for Hope during Italy's severe lockdowns in 2020. Millions of people watched the stream from their homes while the rest of the city was quiet. About €4 million was raised at the event for hospitals battling the illness. He was commended by some for providing solace in the midst of a gloomy spring. As the national death toll increased, others expressed discomfort and thought the concert was inappropriate. Bocelli later acknowledged that he felt upset and embarrassed by some of the responses, but he also claimed to be glad to have assisted hospitals. The event demonstrated the difficulty of striking a balance in a wounded nation between art, mourning, and public health. His private life was always changing as the world saw his public life. After 3 years of courting, he wed Enrique Cenzati in 1990. Amos, their first son, was delivered in 1995 via an emergency C-section following severe pregnancy problems. Early on, Bocelli's business and family life sometimes clash, so he canceled a number of shows to be with her. Matteo, their second son, was born in 1997. He was doing around 200 shows annually by the year 2000. Enrique cooked silent dinners by himself over extended periods of time, sometimes leaving them unfinished because he was unable to get home. Slowly, but more emotionally than physically, the distance developed. They split up in 2002. On the surface, the divorce music stayed serene. There were no overt scandals, and Enrique subsequently blamed emotional distance rather than treachery. They continued to reside in nearby homes in Tuscany, and Bocelli is reported to have contributed about €500,000 annually to allow their sons to remain near both parents. Another chapter started in the same year. He met 18-year-old Veronica Berti at a party in 2002 when he was 44 years old. Later on, she would become his manager and partner. Their common Tuscan ancestry and love of music brought them together right away. That evening, he sang her Occhi da Fata, and she later remembered that while he sang, the room seemed to shrink to just the two of them. Due to their 25-year music age difference, they moved in together that same evening, a decision that stoked press allegations of a forbidden love. Their relationship solidified in spite of the rumors. In 2012, Veronica gave birth to their daughter Virginia, who quickly started singing on stage with her father. Andrea and Veronica were wed at the Italian sanctuary of Montenero on March 21, 2014. Despite all the attention, they have consistently maintained that the true question has never been age. More important to them than the numbers were their common values and love of their homeland and music. Their middle child, Matteo, made his own slow way to the limelight. He was raised in the shadow of his father's celebrity after being born in 1997. When he was younger, he started singing, but he was too bashful to perform for Andrea. Instead, he sang for his mother. He studied music and began playing the piano at the age of 6. However, he was afraid of being compared to his father at every note, thus he was reluctant to dive straight into pop or opera. In 2018, that was altered. He and Andrea recorded the duet Fall on Me when he was 18. Matteo made his worldwide debut with the song, which soon gained popularity on the internet. Andrea was candid about his aspirations for his son and cautioned him about the dangers of celebrity. He advised him to maintain his modesty and to keep in mind that praise is fleeting. Since then, Matteo has published his own albums and performed at important events, such as Kourtney Kardashian and Travis Barker's wedding, gradually establishing a career that is associated with his father but unmistakably his own. Fans all across the world have come to love their duets, which combine mainstream music with classical color. Beneath all of these subsequent victories lies a tale that started prior to Andrea's birth. Eddie's mother was admitted to the hospital in 1958 due to appendicitis while she was pregnant. Doctors urged her to terminate the pregnancy after informing her that her unborn child might have a handicap. As a devoted Catholic, Eddie declined to do so. At the age of 12, Andrea lost all of his vision due to congenital glaucoma. He discussed his mother's decision in public in 2018 and utilized the narrative to promote pro-life causes in Italy. Many listeners were moved by the story and believed it to be evidence of his mother's bravery. At the same time, he was chastised by feminist music organizations and campaigners for publicly expressing his views on a complex problem through a very personal story. They contended that he disregarded the rights of women and the challenging facts of abortion. But for Bocelli, this narrative is fundamental to who he is. He frequently brings it up in concerts and interviews, and it influences how he discusses music, life, faith, and the stage. There have also been more obvious tests on his body. He sustained damaged ribs after being thrown off a horse in Tuscany in July 2010, just days before a big concert. It was necessary to take him to the hospital. Doctors advised him to take it easy. He nevertheless made the decision to proceed with the performance. He walked on stage while still in pain, covering the wound with a carefully bandaged chest. His perseverance and the hardship the show had on his already fragile physique were covered by reporters. For many fans, the picture of music, a blind singer standing in agony and refusing to cancel, came to represent his unwavering dedication to both music and the audience. His Tuscan vineyard had its own peculiar tales to tell. Bocelli became a natural at family wine tastings since he had an exceptionally keen sense of smell after losing his sight. He claimed that during one such taste in 2005, he detected an odd music smell in a bottle and thought something wasn't right. After consuming wine that he believed may have been tainted by envious rivals, the situation worsened and he ended up in the hospital. Although authorities eventually came to the conclusion that it was a hoax, the report soon gained traction and enhanced his mystique. The story illustrated the strain that comes with celebrity in a cutthroat industry like Italian wine. It also alluded to the ways in which an acute perception, although beneficial, can often engender mistrust and anxiety. There were more storms in 2020. Bocelli's remarks regarding lockdowns in Italy, in addition to the concert at the Milan Cathedral, provoked indignation. Many individuals took his remarks on personal freedom and the idea that music, stringent regulations were too onerous as a call to disregard health precautions. His remarks and posts on social media drew harsh condemnation. He was accused by some of promoting actions that could endanger life. He reportedly received death threats, music, as a result of the overwhelming criticism and temporarily relocated to his home in the United States for protection. The episode once again demonstrated how admiration can rapidly turn to rage and how challenging it can be for public personalities to discuss freedom, politics, and health in the midst of a worldwide crisis. Tensions existed even within his own house. For a while, his oldest son, Amos, distanced himself from music. Feelings of rivalry and alienation were sparked by witnessing Matteo emerge as a young pop star. Instead, Amos shifted his focus to business, avoiding stages and microphones. The family developed a silent rift as a result. The brothers continued to interact and communicate, but something remained unspoken. That disparity eventually started to narrow in 2023 over a private Christmas dinner in Tuscany. When the family got together, the two brothers opened up about their individual lifestyles, pressures, and expectations. That evening turned into a pivotal moment. After music, fans learned about their reconciliation. Andrea went on to offer messages about the value of family harmony and the fact that even a well-known family needs to overcome hurt, pride, and jealousy. His plot had expanded to the point where it required its own movie by 2025. Andrea Bocelli's documentary Because I Believe debuted at the Toronto International Film Festival in September of that year. Viewers witnessed never-before-seen video, including scenes from the 12-year-old soccer accident that has frequently been connected to his eventual blindness, as well as personal snippets from his early years in Tuscany and his Grammy experiences. Over the course of its first weekend, the movie made roughly $5 million globally. It went on to become 2025's highest-grossing music documentary. Along with historical footage from his early years, it featured interviews with family, co-workers, and former friends. The film became both a celebration and a reflection of the challenges he had surmounted because of the timing, which coincided with the 30th anniversary of his musical career. Its emotional honesty and ability to convey both the glory of his musical performances and the price of achieving that level won it accolades from critics. Another eagerly anticipated career milestone was reached that same year. Bocelli won Best Opera Solo Performance for Alabo Aria, which was recorded during his Napa Valley residence, at the Grammy Awards on February 25 in Los Angeles. Recorded live in front of 15,000 fans, the performance featured his typical blend of emotion and expertise. The fact that he defeated well-known musicians like Joyce Donato and Placido Domingo added to the victory's impact. This was his first solo Grammy music in that particular category, despite numerous previous nominations. He was 67. He thanked his family, music, his collaborators, and the audiences who had supported him over the past 30 years in an acceptance speech that moved the audience. His connection to international sports kept expanding. Alongside pop sensation Robbie Williams, he played music Nessun Dorma at the FIFA World Cup 2026 final draw in Washington, D.C., on December 5, 2025. The groups for the expanded 48-team competition were revealed during the draw, which attracted about 2,000 spectators inside the arena and over 1 billion viewers worldwide. After attending World Cup ceremonies in 2006 and 2010, this was his third time attending a FIFA function. His capacity to establish connections with individuals from a wide range of nations and cultures led organizers to select him once more. FIFA announced a $1 million grant to the Andrea Bocelli Foundation to promote children's music initiatives throughout the tournament. Clips of his performance rapidly went viral on social media, and his presence transformed music from a mere attraction into a moment of shared culture. Just before that, a more personal project came along. Together with Matteo and Virginia, he released the family Christmas single, The Greatest Gift, in November 2025. The song featured a solo by Virginia at the age of 10, suggesting that the Bocelli musical line will not finish with her brothers. It was recorded in a Tuscan vineyard. In its first week, the video received 3 million views on YouTube, making it one of the most popular Christmas releases of that year. The harmony of the three voices and the warmth of the lyrics were commended by critics of music. The project felt like an invitation into the family's private life because behind-the-scenes footage showed them having fun and joking among the vines. In less than 48 hours, a limited vinyl version of Music sold out, and the money raised helped fund the foundation's efforts to promote music education in underprivileged areas. In his humanitarian and financial life, all of these strands converge. With over 90 million recordings sold, international tours, and business endeavors like his high-end wine line, Andrea Bocelli's net worth, music, surpassed $100 million by 2025, when he was 67 years old. However, he has frequently stated that the aspect of his legacy that is most important to him is his foundation. Through its initiatives in education and the arts, the Andrea Bocelli Foundation reached around 5,000 people in 2025 and assisted about 1,000 children living in extreme poverty. Music. The establishment of Braille music programs in Haiti, which provided blind students with additional resources for learning and performing, was one of its most noteworthy initiatives that year. Some of these project locations, including a school where kids sang his songs in Braille notation, were personally visited by Bocelli. In honor of this work, he was given the United Nations Global Humanitarian Award in October 2025. A 30% increase in funding over 2024 was reported in the Foundation's annual report for that year, indicating that its reach was still expanding.